Gojira, Fortitude, album review. Let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Here to chat about this new one from Gojira. They are a French art metal, progressive metal act who over the years I've become a pretty big fan of, even if I wasn't really into a lot of their early stuff, like Terra Incognita and The Link. I mean, I certainly get the appeal, but for me, these albums were dealing with a lot of the same tropes of the late 90s that were kind of stale by the time that they arrived, at least for me. They pulled a lot from groove metal and technical death metal, which, ironically, they do a lot on this new album, but a whole lot better. No, for me, it was around the time of From Mars to Sirius that I got super into Gojira's very visual, artsy, progressive, well-performed stuff. I mean, I was super into bands like Mastodon at the time, and even Lamb of God, and I just couldn't say no to Gojira's stuff. Now, they almost lost me again with The Way of All the Flesh. I just really wasn't into the production on this album nearly as much, even though the album did have its strong points. However, with albums like L'Enfant Sauvage and this one here, Magma, Gojira started writing some of the best metal music of the last 10 years or so. They continuously just seem to be pushing the genre to a really exciting new level. And the singles that they've dropped leading up to this new album have been pretty much all around fantastic. I've been super excited to chat about this thing, and for the most part, it is exactly what I needed to hear from Gojira in 2021. This album starts off with Born for One Thing, and honestly, this is a fantastic single. This is a thunderous, pummeling track that if you're new to the sound of Gojira, this sums it up in about 5 minutes. Very, very well, too. It's also, I don't know, kind of catchy, just oddly enough, sort of catchy, just enough to stick with you. But outside of that, this is Gojira by the books in the best way. The thunderous riff, the breakneck drums, it is slightly progressive. And lyrically, it brings up the massively depressive, post-apocalyptic feel of this entire album. This is a fantastic start. On the other hand, Amazonia is very twisted, very intense. It's much more dangerous and rough around the edges sounding, and I love that. A lot of the little details here are pretty fantastic as well, like that twangy strumming that comes in, like what even is that? As well as the group choir vocals that come in for the chorus and those vocoder vocals as well. There's a lot of really odd little details here, but they all work wonderfully. It helps give the music of Gojira so much depth. Another World, on the other hand, is one of the most straightforward tracks here, and that's far from a slight. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most passionately performed and explosive tracks here. I mean, you know the drill by now. It is pummeling. It is post-apocalyptic. It is crushing, it is prophetic, and it is everything that I crave about modern metal. Not to mention, no hope in sight, but isn't that what metal's about? And you know what, with all those things I just said, I don't want to make it sound like this album is in the least bit predictable. Trust me, it's not. No, it's just kind of where I expected to hear Gojira, and it's where I want to hear them. And pound for pound, Hold On may be my favorite track here. This is a tremendous left hook of a track that's a little bit more on the melodic side, without really losing what makes this album so crushing to begin with. It takes its time, it builds super nicely, and by the time that it revs up to full speed, there is no stopping it. It's also one of the most intense tracks as far as lyrics go. I mean, I love how frantic and urgent it is. Yeah, overall, this album is absolutely where I want to hear Gojira. There are a few tracks here, though, that just underwhelm me a little bit. For my liking, I think Newfound is the worst track here. This is the sort of chugging, goofy track that I would have heard on one of their early projects and just not been that into. There are so many more genuinely progressive and well-rounded tracks on this album. Then we hear this, which just sounds stuck in 1999. It's full of cliches, which I usually love, and it's super ugly, which I also usually love, but it just, nothing comes together on this track. It doesn't even sound like the same band. We also get Fortitude, which is this short sort of intermission. And you know what? I just think it's not very effective for my liking. Like, it's not offensive, it's not bad, but when you see just how good the chant is that follows it up, I just think it's not really worth the time. It's a little bit redundant in my book. And The Trails is a disappointment as well. Look, this is a somber track, but then we get tracks earlier like The Chant that do that so much better. This is just so much more I don't know, just inoffensive and just sort of goofy, and I took nothing from it. But the rest of this album is Gojira, by the books, in the best way, and I needed this right now. The chant is awesome. I love the tragic nature of this. I love how dreary and melodic it is. There has been so much great, dreary, sorrowful metal this year. It also just feels right, like it has a place on this album. On the other hand, we get Sphinx, and I love just how soaring this track is at the same time as, epic and soaring it is. Like I said, it's also repulsive and gruesome and one of the most dangerous sounding tracks here. It's really bulky. There are some really great groove metal elements to this track too, which I can't remember the last time I said was a positive thing about an album. This is just a really great breath of fresh air right now. And Into the Storm is great. I love how ominous this track starts off, but it revs up and takes flight super quickly. And let me tell you, this is just a fiery track all around. I mean, between the ruthless riff that we get here and these breakneck drums and this just catchy enough chorus to make you remember it, Gojira have this down to a science. And the production here, and for most of this album, is just really great sounding. Like there are some production tricks on the later half of this track that just make this come off super sonic and just, so good. And they finish off this album on a really passionate, wild-eyed note with grind. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most ridiculous tracks here. It just does such a great job of taking up some of the best moments and best ideas of this album, cramming it all together for one last sucker punch. Not only that, but it's got a pretty great groove to it as well. Long live Gojira. So yeah, this new one from Gojira is pretty great, albeit very bleak and depressive at times and post-apocalyptic. It shows them going back in their discography, bringing to life the more progressive side of their earlier stuff, as well as the groove metal elements, which may not have disappeared completely over the years, but they're certainly more prominent these days. But they also bring that up to speed alongside of their artsier side, as well as their more hook-driven side. And you know what? The result may not be the most mind-melting or mind-boggling album in their discography. I don't think it's their best album, but this is just Gojira by the books in the best way. And at the end of the day, that is so far from a bad thing. As a matter of fact, this batch of tracks is awesome. Feeling a decent 8 on this thing, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.